Hello and welcome back to Niche Tea, where we talk about drama happening in communities you may not be a part of. Last time we talked about a really concerning series of alleged behaviors from a very prominent member of the tabletop role-playing game community named Gabe Hicks. I don't normally say this, but please go watch and support the people involved if you're not familiar with this. They could use all the help they can get. Today I have my corporate cosplay on, and that's because we're talking about a situation that's happening in the recruitment space community, people who work in and around hiring. And this is happening primarily on LinkedIn. Based on views, I bet that the vast majority of you have not seen this yet, and I wanted to cover it not only because it is actually interesting from a tea perspective in terms of some of the back and forth that happens here, but also because the topic this whole drama surrounds is incredibly relevant to anyone looking to get a job now or in the immediate future at least. There are two primary people at the center of this. The first is a person named Robin Story. Robin is the owner of a company called Storyline Resumes, which, as you might have guessed, is a resume generation company. You would go to them and hire them to then consult with you about your experience and all this stuff, and they would generate a resume for you to then take into the job market. And they also offer similar kind of adjacent capabilities, like they can help you redo your LinkedIn profile, they can help you with your cover letter, they can help you make a biography, they have coaching lessons for like executive level tracks or upward mobility. There's not a ton of detail on the website about what the coaching sessions entail, so I don't have a lot of detail there. Robin herself also has a very prominent profile. She has almost 1 million followers on LinkedIn. That's such a weird thing to think about, but it makes a ton of sense given what her business is. LinkedIn is exactly where I would expect to see the most from somebody who does what she does. And from what I can see, part of the reason she's gained such a following is she does a lot of what's called hero posting. You see this type of thing a lot on Facebook as well. It's like these very inspirational, uplifting stories. They use a lot of heavy, like motivational language. In Robin's case, a lot of those refer to supposed client interactions that she's had through her company. So she's using this as a marketing tactic, and it works very well for her. Now, on the other side of this, we have Dan from HR. Dan is an HR consultant. He's somebody a company's HR team will hire to come in and help kind of possibly revamp their recruitment and hiring process. He also does have social presence himself with about 40,000 followers on LinkedIn, and he does have a TikTok profile as well, which I have tagged below. Dan's content is much more tactical than Robin's. He talks about very specific, in the weeds things about the hiring process, as well as what candidates can do and be on the lookout for when they're looking for a job. So, what happened? Since Dan works as a consultant, his income is not consistent. It depends on the number of engagements he has at any given point. So to supplement that, in his words, he occasionally takes on job search clients to help fill in those gaps. One of the services he offers is resume review and remake. And what he claims he started to see was over and over again, people coming to him, asking him, what's wrong with this resume that I paid a whole bunch of money to have professionally made because it's not getting me anywhere further? Is it the resume or is it something else? And according to Dan, while he is well used to seeing companies that like market themselves as being resume makers make bad resumes, like there are certain ones that are just on the list, he's been noticing more and more, especially in the past like year or so, that ones coming from Robin Story's company are showing up as problematic ones he has to fix. He claims that he's seen enough of this from people who have come to him secondarily after getting resumes from Robin Story's team that he DM'd her about it and was like, you should be aware of this. And then a couple weeks ago, he made an actual post on LinkedIn saying, I've reached out to her about this multiple times and she hasn't said anything back, so I'm posting this here. He basically says in the post, look, I know that Robin and her team are known on this platform as being like a go-to for getting a good resume. Here has been my experience with this. People have come to me who have paid hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a resume from Robin Story's team, and they are very expensive, those packages. Like the lowest one is like $500. And Dan claims that as he's taking a look at these resumes that people have paid so much money for and haven't had any success with, he's seeing the same problems over and over again. These problems really come down to the fact that, according to Dan, Robin Story's team is generating resumes that follow a very old style, one from like the late aughts, early 2010s. Dan says that they're visually very standout and very beautiful and have some really unique formatting, and all of that was fine 10 years ago. But as of right now, that's very harmful for most candidates. The main reason being that they are not well suited to be easily read by an applicant tracking system or an ATS. ATSs are used by basically all companies at this point to filter through resumes and rank them and pull the best ones out. That's how they then decide who to give initial callbacks to. And if your resume is not formatted properly, which means it has to be very simple in nature, then it's not going to make it anywhere in that system and your resume will just get lost. Dan also calls out how text heavy these are, like even if they get past the ATS system, looking at them is kind of painful, and makes a point that the information that's most important to the recruitment team who's looking through your resume is not well presented or highlighted. You have to really search to find it. And unfortunately, when it comes to hiring, the ease with which you make the process for the HR team is actually super important. These are people who largely have no actual connection to the job itself. Someone else is the hiring manager. They've been told, look for these 5 things, and they've been going through possibly hundreds of resumes each day looking for those 5 things. You want to make that as easy for them as humanly possible, and this format, according to Dan, is not one that helps, and my personal understanding agrees with that. It needs to be much more simplistic than this and not nearly as text heavy and more highlighting on the things that actually matter. So Dan makes this post and he thinks he's probably going to get some sort of flack from Robin's followers or fans or whatever, because she apparently has a very dedicated group of people who support her. What he did not expect was for Robin to now reach out to him about this post. She clearly took this very personally, and in my opinion, it was a very defensive message. She says his post was bullying. She says that he only made the post to help benefit his business. She implies there's some grounds for legal action based on his post, but that she's like above that. The only piece of her message that does actually speak to the content of Dan's post is specifically that she says that they do provide an ATS compatible version of the resume in addition to the more stylistic kind, which apparently is kind of their brand design. Though Dan showed some examples and some of them literally just had Microsoft Smart Art in them. I have never seen that in my life, and I would potentially expect something like that from somebody right out of college, but not for an executive level. But then again, maybe I'm literally wrong. Dan then responds to Robin and is like, look, I don't make my business doing this. I've been doing this on the side, but like, that's not what I do. There's no real benefit to me about this. And moreover, I'm concerned about the fact that I've been trying to get in touch with you for a really long time about this, because I got, according to Dan, at least 30 people who needed to have their resumes remade who had originally paid hundreds of dollars to your company to have this done. And if it were me, I would want to know why they weren't happy so I could fix it. He points out, I think rightfully, that she seems more focused in the perception of her as like good than she does about whether or not she's actually helping people. She responds with like Shakespeare level sarcasm, which is honestly pretty funny, and goes on to say, we have so many clients, some are bound to be dissatisfied with what they get, and that's what comes with the business, but that they have been a successful business, according to Robin, for so many years because they do know what their clients need. Dan responds one more time, reiterating some of the same points, and I believe at this point Robin blocked him. Now Dan has been recounting this whole situation on TikTok. I've been showing screenshots of that as I go. And because he's been talking about it, he goes on to claim in his 3rd video talking about this situation that he's had hundreds of people reach out to him and say, I have had an issue with her, and I just was scared to say anything, honestly, because she's so big. He also went out and found that there were reviews within the last 6 months from the Better Business Bureau of people being like, yeah, this was not it for me. Point being, assumedly, that maybe this is more of an issue than Robin may wish to think it is. And then finally, Dan posted that somebody allegedly reached out to him who had been looking at jobs at Robin's business. And when you look at the rates, you're talking about like a 10 to 15% margin of the several $100s that comes in from somebody hiring them to do the resume for them goes to the actual resume writer, which is a whole separate thing, but also concerning. I'll say that based on what I can see, I think Robin is aiming for a very executive, very bespoke interview process level client. I think they offer this for anyone, but given the price point associated with it, like who in their first job or two is going to pay $600 for a resume? I'm assuming her business model is really meant for the people who's going to have somebody hand their resume directly to the hiring manager who's like the C-suite level person. And the reality is that's a completely different thing. And so they don't care about ATS. They don't care about any of this other stuff. They want to look sophisticated because also those folks are older and also look for the same type of thing that was big years ago when they were coming up in the business world. But if you're an average worker, Dan's stuff's going to be way more useful to you. The big takeaway is beware of these resume companies. Odds are you can make your own great resume using a template and simple tips.